As we all know, service transitions can be awkward. What do you do in between songs or between songs and the message, or if you have communion or if you have announcements? How can we make them as smooth as possible? Well, good news. Today on Practical Church Planting, we're going to give you 5 tips for better service transitions.
Welcome back to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Androsian. Joining me is Dylan Dodson. And today we're talking about 5 tips for better service transitions.
That's right, Brian.
Oh, that is so right.
Because sometimes transitions can be awkward and not fun,
sure can.
And we don't know what to do. So you're in your service, and so how do you transition between songs or between the message, giving, whatever it is, communion? How can you make them go smoother? We have 5 tips for you.
Let's transition to them.
Let's go. Number one, one way to do this is to talk through your service beforehand. I was going to look up the episode number and I completely forgot. But we have a service run-through, talk-through-ish thing, one of our episodes. You can find it.
I'm going to guess 40s or 50s.
Great guess. We'll see if you're right, Brian.
Yep.
So we have an episode on it, but you can search the topics. But we would say this, talk through it beforehand. So, everybody who's part of the service, we would recommend not just doing the service and not just practicing the songs or whatever, but actually talking through what it's going to look like. So, like for us at New City, we have the band, the production team, me, whoever's preaching, and whoever's doing next steps announcements. Basically, if you're on stage at any point, or if you're in the production booth, you know what the transitions are going to look like so that we can all work together.
Yep.
But the importance of this is to talk through, okay, after this, between these 2 songs, what are you going to do? To start the service, what are you going to do? Between the songs and the message, what are you going to do? If you have communion, what are you going to do? Ending the service. Basically, talking through what it's going to look like and not just assuming people are going to know, because obviously, oftentimes, if people don't know, they're not going to do anything, and it will be awkward. And we've just found one of the easiest ways to do it is to just say, hey, what do we want this to look like? And that way you have an idea.
Yep, and that way you have an idea. It takes away any questions or mystery, I guess you could say. You'd be surprised, even if your service seems very straightforward and like there's not going to be any issues, you'd be surprised the different thoughts people have, or they think things are going to happen in different orders, or different things are going to happen at these times. So even just talking through, even if it seems like a very simple service and it may not be necessary, or you don't think it's necessary, just talking through it really helps smooth things out.
And it's really important. So we just celebrated 2 years as a church, and we still do this every single Sunday. Even if it's a pretty typical Sunday, we know everything that's going to happen. We'll say, who's playing at this point, or who's talking at this point, or what is this going to look like, especially if you have someone who's not normally up there, whether that's a different worship leader, if somebody who's doing announcements has never done that before, and they don't know what to expect, just to say, here's what this transition will look like, here's what's going to be going on, so that everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
So that's number 1. Talk through what your transitions, what your service flow will actually look like. It'll help with your transitions. And then here's number 2, what you should do after you talk through it. Brian, what should you do after you talk through it?
You should do it. You should
run
through it.
You should run through it. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Because, anyway, talk through. Do it doesn't sound as good as run through with talk through.
Yeah.
Just trying to sound fun. There we go. Anyway,
we didn't
you
talk
ruined my
through
thunder.
this.
We didn't. So you want to do a service run through, which means what we do, and we have an episode on it somewhere in the 40s or 50s, Brian says.
Possibly.
Is we talk through the transitions, and then we do the entire service. So we do the lights, we do the songs, we do between the songs, the message. Now I don't give the entire message. I'm up there for the transition, but we do everything. If there's a video, we'll start we don't necessarily have to watch the whole video, but we'll start the video and we'll skip to the end and make sure that transition works. We actually practice it so we know what to expect, because oftentimes talking through it is good, and then you do it and you realize it doesn't work, or you talk through it and someone wasn't paying attention or they missed it. It allows you to take what you just practiced with your words, you practice it with your actions, so that when the service comes, because oftentimes people are more nervous, there's people watching in the audience, things can be a little bit more tense. And so when everybody knows what they're going to do, it makes everything flow easier. People aren't as nervous. It makes things not awkward because you know exactly how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I think this is hugely necessary, and it really helps people if you have sort of a production team, or if you do lights, or I assume you do sound, but if you do lights, things like that, it helps them kind of figure out those transitions as well. So what we do when we run through it is, obviously Dylan, like he said, doesn't give us a whole message. We don't play through every video, but the transitions and things like that, if someone's a little late or if they're not really paying attention and miss them, we go back and redo them. Because if you miss say a light cue and the lights stay off for an extra couple seconds, those couple seconds make everything way more awkward. Or if you bring them on too early and the person isn't
Right.
ready or something like that. And so it helps you kind of iron those out in run through and let the person running the lights know that, hey, this is actually a big deal to make sure you're on time.
Right.
And it's much easier to iron those out in a run through than to notice them during service.
Right. So number 2 is service run through. Number 3, which Brian just introduced for us, is practice them again if you mess up.
That's right.
So what this looks like is, again, we talked through it. Okay, after this song, the lights are going to change. Or after the announcements, this is going to start happening. And so then you do it and it doesn't work. It's not enough to say, oh, that didn't work. We'll fix it during the service. You won't.
Yeah.
You want to make sure everybody actually knows what's going on. And so we'll stop. And it's not like no one's getting called out. Like nobody's in trouble. Nobody's anything. It's just, oh, that didn't work. Let's make sure we know. Because sometimes people are confused.
Yep.
And when you talk through it, they might feel embarrassed saying, wait, I don't understand. But then when you run through it, you see, like you actually see, oh, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? And I would even say this, like, let's say you're like, well, we're a church playing. We're just started. Like, it's just me and the guy playing the guitar. Like, I don't think it's necessary. Again, maybe if it's just one guy playing a guitar, he doesn't need to run through the entire song because it's just him. But I would still do every transition. Like, what is he going to say, if anything, between the songs? When is he going to get off? When are you going to come up? If there's going to be prayer. So like most people, after the last song before the message, somebody prays on the worship team, and then somebody's playing under them. So making sure that person, whoever's supposed to be playing, knows that they're supposed to be playing. Or if there's a light cue that's missed on the video, or the video didn't start in time, practicing it again so that everybody knows what it's actually supposed to look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think over preparing is a good thing. People
Yep.
are taking the time out of their Sunday. They could go anywhere. In most of our cases, people have a lot of other options to go to, and they're coming to the church that you're running. I think that we owe it to them to make sure we're fully prepared and give them our best.
Right. And I think too, if you think, well, there's only 2 of us on the stage, so we don't really need it. You're also creating a culture of like, we do things well, but also as we add more pieces, it's not like, oh, now we need to start like trying. It's
Yeah,
like, this is
that's
just
true.
what we do. And so if there's a new person, nobody feels called out. We just do this every single week. We practice it. That way, in the service, if it's going to go well, if it's not. And again, even of us, our transitions are always practiced and often pretty similar, so we know it's going to happen, but they still get missed.
Yep.
And so doing a run through and doing them again, make sure everybody's comfortable. Because I would even say this, if you're preaching or if you're a worship leader, if you're on stage at some point, but especially if you're preaching, it's hard for you to be focused if you're worried about how everything's going to go. If you're not sure when you're supposed to come up or what's supposed to be happening, like it's just hard for you to be, or like, at the end of your message, like the band is supposed to come back up and play or something's supposed to happen, but you're not sure how the transition is going to go. It's hard not to be distracted in the moment when you're worrying about these things.
Yeah.
So it allows you to focus better. So again, talk through them, run through them, and practice that again if it messes up, just so you're on the same page. Here's number 4 for during the service, and that's this, that you shouldn't point them out if they don't go smoothly. Now, if it's like some big thing and, I don't know, something falls over or whatever, and you want to make a joke or whatever, although make sure like you're not being awkward with it. I would just err on the side of, if you're not sure what to do, don't say anything. Like people often will know, oh, that maybe shouldn't have happened, or that was a little weird. But just going with it and just continuing the service is way better than pointing it out. And then the people that weren't paying attention were like, oh, that was awkward. And then you've got to reel people back in because they're like, wait, what just happened there? And so I would say if something was a little awkward, didn't go the way that you wanted it to go, like let's say, for example, like in our case, we have lights and the lights didn't go up right away. Don't just, and now if it's 10 seconds, then
Right.
maybe, but if it's a few seconds, like, okay, that was a little awkward, whatever, keep going. I think if you point out awkward transitions, it just kind of makes it worse for everybody.
Yeah, I think we have I think it's more comfortable to point them out
Right.
almost. We have kind of a tendency we think everyone's noticing it, so we want to kind of reference it so they know that we notice it too. Like if lights aren't coming on to say something. But even if people are noticing it, they're not thinking about it as much as you are.
Right.
They don't think it's as big a deal as you're thinking it is. So bringing attention to it and pointing it out just alerts them, letting them know that, hey, this is actually a bigger deal.
Right. Yeah. Again, I think most people, they might expect things to not go perfect or whatever. And even if you're trying to improve your transitions and they don't go well, I wouldn't bring extra attention to something that wasn't perfect because they maybe not have noticed, or it can just not be good.
Yeah.
So don't point them out unless it's some really big thing. Just keep going and it'll be smoother than you think it will be. Again, like you said, we feel like we have to say something and then it just makes it worse.
Right.
So I wouldn't say anything. And then number 5, this is really important for a lot of these, is you want to avoid silent transitions. So this could be in between songs. So the guitarist has to change their capo and there's nothing. Or when someone's praying and the band is coming up or getting off the stage or something is moving and there's just prayer and there's not, I would recommend playing under it or whatever, just to help fill some of the noise so that if there's things that are moving, people aren't as distracted.
Yep.
Again, especially between songs, like everyone's great, that was good, and then you have to wait 10 seconds for it to be quiet. Even in that situation, like just say something, like have somebody talk and be like, hey, we're so excited we're here today, or mention something about the song you're about to sing. But silent transitions can be awkward.
Yeah.
In this case, like let's say bumper videos are really great for this. Like after the band does their thing and the message comes up, it can be awkward, or it can help, bumper videos are good not just to introduce whatever's being talked about, but also to get people off the stage. But even if you don't have a bumper video, what I would recommend is while whoever the band is praying, if you're preaching, get all of your stuff on stage and be ready. So as soon as the band says amen, you're ready to go as they're getting off the stage. And I wouldn't like get into your sermon right away because people are going to be a little distracted, but just say, if you've got a funny story, just you be prepared so you can make the transition as quick as possible. But silence often makes things a little bit more awkward.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Silence is awkward, especially in a setting where there's a lot of people. And so whatever you can do to minimize that silence, whether it's just having your guitarist pick the guitar for a little bit. Like,
Yep.
It doesn't have to be some complicated thing where you don't have to create a video for every transition, but just something so that there's just at least a little bit of a lull of noise to kind of
Right.
mask the shuffling of feet and mask the sound of people sitting down in their chairs.
Yep.
Just kind of keep things flowing along, and it makes it a little less choppy of a service.
Yeah, and even if, like, let's say you're doing communion and you explain communion, then people have to go up and get it, or maybe
Yeah.
you pass it out or whatever. Again, having someone play so there's not just kind of this awkward silence noise.
Yep.
So I would always, for the best that you can, have someone speak or have someone be playing or have something be going on where it's not just dead silent, because those can be a little awkward.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a new person and you're not sure what's supposed to be happening to you, you feel like something's wrong. I think what can often happen is we get so used to how things are that we're like, oh, well, this is just how it is. It's fine. But we always want to get better. We always want to be improving. And I would even say this too, like with your worship team and, with worship leaders, like it's okay to talk about transitions. Be like, hey, what does it look like for us to maybe you need to practice what you're going to say in between these songs. Like,
Yeah, totally.
Don't just say I'll figure it out then. Or if you have someone doing announcements, or as we call them, next steps, and they're new, when we do our next steps, we have them practice it out loud because next steps and announcements can be boring. And so we have them come early to our run through, have them get on stage, they talk through it out loud, then they talk through how the transition is going to be. Because if people, unless there's a lot of experience there, you just don't want to rely on people just figuring it out, because oftentimes I figure it out means I have no idea what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to get nervous, and the transition is going to be awkward.
And it's not going to be good. Yeah, over-prepare. There's nothing wrong with over-preparing. And people are, like I said, people are given time out of their day to come to your church. Make sure that you have something prepared for them.
Right. And it's not about being perfect, but it's about doing the best that we can, about minimizing distractions, because we want to connect and engage with people.
Yeah, mistakes will always come, and mistakes are totally fine. But when mistakes come because of, this is going to sound harsh, but sorry, but because of laziness or just not preparing or not thinking through it,
Right.
I think that's different than just making a mistake. So
Right.
do everything you can to minimize it.
Yeah. So again, 5 tips: talk through your service, talk through your transitions, run through them. Number 2. Number 3, if it's messed up, just do it again. Make sure everyone's on the same page, because oftentimes a mistake is because someone was confused or wasn't sure what was going on. So run through it again so they know. Number 4, if something awkward happens, don't draw extra attention to it. Just keep going. It's not the end of the world.
Yep.
And number 5, try to avoid silent transition. So have someone playing in the times if people are walking or speaking, but don't just have nothing going on, because that can make for an awkward transition.
Sure can.
So thanks for listening to us today. If you have questions about service and preaching and church planting and ministry, practicalplanning.com/questions, and we'll talk about it in a future episode. And so again, thanks for being with us. And we'll be with you next time on Practical Church Planting. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planting. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planting, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planting on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.